I tried animating Roblox, but only with After Effects. As an avid consumer of YouTube, recently a spike in Roblox animations, really cool ones, flooded my homepage. I'm gonna assume most of you have seen these before, but I haven't, and it's just something that makes them really unique and compelling as it feels out of reach for me. The only software I'm confident with is After Effects, and it's not exactly known for producing these. However, there are two very popular softwares for Roblox animations, which is Blender and Roblox Studio. They're both completely free, but the more popular one is Moon Animator, and that'll come at a cost. I'm currently using the school Adobe Cloud, which makes After Effects free, and I don't feel like spending on something that I might not pursue. Also, Blender confuses the heck out of me. But it's not like I haven't worked with 3D objects before, and here's a few examples of my work. I've only ever lightly used 3D objects, usually a single object, but never one with multiple moving parts and dynamics like a character. Why is it all warships? Well, I do have another channel called Nebula, but I wanted to expand my skill sets and learn more. As for an animation reference, I saw this cool opening while doom scrolling. It's the second one for Nisekoi. Before I began, I watched a few how to get good at animating videos, and you gotta start with a walk or run cycle, or both. I don't know who came up with it, because I was so bad at doing any of it, so I skipped that step and started working on the first scene. But before all of this, how did I even do any of this? I downloaded this player avatar plugin for Roblox Studio, ported characters that I know into it, and exported each of their accessories and body parts individually, making sure they're exported correctly without anomalies. Based on my reference, the girl had been swooped up by a wagon and rolled downhill. The best idea I got is a classic Roblox cart, but it's being pushed instead. The cart had to be modified because it still had those functions that make it work, and that didn't look good in the animation. I then imported them into After Effects and tried rescaling to composition size, but that left some parts scaled way differently. So I found out that just importing them without auto scaling, then attaching them to another layer to rescale simultaneously was a quick fix. There's probably a plugin for After Effects for 3D animation and rigging that'll make things 10 times easier, but the only plugins I'll be using is FX Console and Ease Copy, which are both free. Now we start making the run cycle. There isn't any rigging, so moving parts don't get any assist to keep them looking natural. The best you can do is attach all the body parts to the torso, then the torso to another layer. You also got to keep track on which limb is the front, as I don't have that limb thing. It is possible to use that, but personally I'd rather struggle, and struggle I did. This run animation ended up looking a bit goofy, so I restarted, again. I had a bit more experience from the last one, learning from previous mistakes made it easier to progress and animate faster. But guess what? It looked goofy as well. I think I'll just flag it and move on. Next was importing the cart, which was just a slide, adding the character trying to push the cart, then a bit of reaction to make this event appear unexpected. I already made the cart bounce around, which I didn't record, but I did capture me trying to get the character into the tumbling cart. I tried doing an easy trick, which was parenting the character null to the cart, but that was just plain silly, and I ended up manually keyframing everything anyways. It does look really rough, but that's because it stands alone. I revisit by adding a temporary environment such as a road, background and foreground to help with the illusion of speed, as all of these elements are crucial to the animation. I also try fixing up the character tumbling around to make it smoother and less jagged through the graph editor. Then adding posts to the railings, which did not have to be animated this way, but yeah, it works. And here's how it looks now. At this moment, watching it loop for a few minutes, I was pretty proud. But this is a dangerous form of procrastination, and I knew these elements were only temporary and needed a final graphic. So I worked on improving the environmental elements to better match my reference. Before I used a basic grid with overlaid textures, but this looked cheap as they all moved at different speeds, which didn't look good even if you weren't paying attention. The refit uses strokes with repeaters, with the vertical strokes being thicker than the horizontal ones. A roughened edge is applied to add imperfections, likewise concrete, then the filling between the grid is a basic turbulent noise with minimal tweaks. The shadows are just drop shadow with a bit of softening. The bolts in the wall were made in a pre-comp, then compiled into a line, then to fill the entire background comp. As for a little bit of effects, a basic spark was made with stroke paths with roughened edges, taper and a bit of glow. The second more aggressive spark was made with CC Particle World, but in a jet. Then for the final touch, I added motion blur to give the final illusion. The next scene involves running, that bit of animation I had skipped earlier today, and reveals the third dimension. I begin by wiping what I made before and try making it based off battleground games, mainly the strongest battlegrounds, except off by memory. I don't know why I didn't do this before, but this time it took only 30 minutes to complete the cycle. Sure, it lacks personality, but it fits more generally in anything. Then I joined the strongest battleground to compare the running. Wait, did they always run so goofy? And like that, I have perfected the running cycle to be used in my animation. The road asset was also downloaded from Roblox Studio, and with everything I needed at disposal, I began setting the scene. Due to the 3D nature, this will operate differently. I include a 3D camera to have better control of the scene, and make a null layer to move the entire scene without breaking or misaligning objects. It was rather late, but I added an ambient and parallel light to give depth and shadows to the characters and the scene. Put a guy inside the cart, and used the running cycle I made earlier. For the next two scenes, which are just close-ups, are fairly simple to make with a motion blurred background from earlier, and a simple animation of a wave, and a nod, followed by a jump. I fixed the duration of these scenes to match the reference and continue to the next. This part is going to be real tough as it starts including proper background, skies, and distant elements, not to mention the wild gymnastics. For this, I create the 3D scene by placing the solid ground first, which is where all the animation will take place. The railing, trees, and the background are added later. Once I am happy with the scene, I begin animating these crazy flips. I had to look closely back and forth between the reference as I have never animated something like this before either. As final visual effects, I let the point of interest of the camera somewhat track the character and apply a bit of wiggle as camera shake. And that completes the starting scene. A flying kick is really general and should be very easy to make, but the R6 model makes it quite awkward sometimes as some of the limbs are quite pointed and don't have a general direction, and it ended up looking like a PNG just gliding across. The next scene uses a curved road, which the current road I have doesn't do that, so I went back to the Roblox studio to find a new road that is curved. It does have these odd extrusions at the bottom, but that's fine. Back into After Effects, I begin compiling the 3D environment to a basic level to quickly start animating the characters. The problem was that my characters were quite large in comparison to the scene, but scaling down over distance was a quick solution. I also grabbed some classic buildings and the Roblox HQ to fill in as the cityscape in the background. Placing them in, they appeared too vibrant as distant figures, so I pre-comped them and altered the brightness to appear as distant city smog. The rest of the trees and bushes are placed into the scene to make it less boring, then the other character is animated in. I went back and added imperfections to the walls to match the reference, and motion blur to this scene to make it more smoother, but it made the rendering significantly longer. There was an idea that the railing should be the classic cart's actual rails, so it makes sense for this scene, and honestly, that was one banger of an idea, so I will use that as the railings from now on. No, I didn't go back and replace the old railings because it's more accurate to that scene during that point in time, and I'm just lazy. Here I begin replacing my placeholders with actual characters and duplicate my running cycle for another character, making the animation process way easier. I quickly begin on this next scene, which is the cart flying past some people. I make the grass using turbulent noise, tritone, and roughen edges with a duplicate layer of a solid color of white for edge highlights. The background is just trees and a greenish solid tone. These animations are nothing complicated, just a quick motion in one direction as these are very fast. This next scene is the cart riding on the railing and the character following closely behind. I prepare the environment and then I make a 2D graphic that moves with the camera pan to give the illusion of 3D, similar to the reference. When placing the cart, the perspective was not quite right, even along the rails, so I did some changes. Good thing it still looks believable from the main camera. After the cart was animated, I duplicated the character inside the cart and offset it to be the guy chasing the cart. And that's what I made without any major prior knowledge of 3D animation. Whilst I did know how to use the software, I have never made a mostly 3D animation with a character. It's not anything incredible in comparison to the elites with Moon Animator and Blender, but for what I made it with, I'm really proud how it turned out. You can argue it's just a copy-paste, but I believe it's that you can recreate this with the software not aimed for this. From what I've learned, using After Effects is particularly useful for animations that do not require any 3D settings, but just a character with motion graphics. After Effects has come quite a long ways, and the possibility to make this is still amazing. If you come this far, thanks for watching and see you later.